married against her will, but the wedding night changed everything. The air was thick with the scent of marigolds and incense, their overpowering aroma failing to mask the suffocating dread in Zara's heart. The grand hall of the mansion was alive with celebration, the echoes of laughter and the rhythmic beats of drums filling the space. Yet, for Zara, the festivities felt hollow, a cruel mockery of the nightmare unfolding before her eyes. She sat rigidly on the wedding stage, her hands clasped together in her lap, fingers cold as ice. The deep red of her bridal attire weighed heavily on her, as if it were stitched with iron chains rather than silk. Her veil obscured her vision, but she didn't need to see the man beside her to feel his presence. Rahim, the groom forced upon her by her father's unyielding will. Zara had pleaded, fought, and cried until her voice was hoarse, but tradition and obligation had sealed her fate. She was a mere pawn in an arrangement that benefited everyone except her. Rahim was twice her age, a wealthy landlord who had set his sights on her long before she even knew of his existence. The wedding was not a union of love but a transaction, her freedom traded for prosperity and alliances. As the final vows were exchanged, and the guests cheered, Zara felt her world crumbling. The evening stretched into an endless nightmare of rituals and customs she had no heart for. The weight of the gold bangles on her wrists and the heavy embroidery of her dupatta felt like shackles. She kept her gaze lowered, avoiding the piercing eyes of Rahim, who studied her with an unsettling mix of possession and satisfaction. Then, the moment she had been dreading arrived. The time to leave her home, her sanctuary, forever. The women of her family wept as they bid her farewell, but their tears were meaningless. They weren't mourning for her loss of freedom, only the departure of a daughter from their household. She was ushered into a grand black car, its leather seats cold beneath her trembling hands. Beside her, Rahim sat in silence, his presence a dark cloud pressing against her. The journey to Rahim's mansion was long, the roads winding through endless stretches of barren land. The closer they got, the more suffocated Zara felt. The imposing silhouette of his ancestral home loomed in the distance, its towering structure swallowed by the eerie glow of the full moon. The mansion stood isolated, surrounded by vast fields that whispered with the ghostly rustle of the wind. As the car halted before the massive iron gates, a strange unease settled in Zara's stomach. The servants emerged like shadows, their faces expressionless as they guided her inside. The interior was grand but suffocating, the walls adorned with portraits of Rahim's ancestors, each figure staring down with hollow eyes. The flickering candlelight cast long, shifting shadows, making the painted faces seem almost alive. Rahim led her through the dimly lit corridors, his grip firm around her wrist. The air was thick with silence, the absence of warmth making the mansion feel less like a home and more like a tomb. Finally, they reached the bridal chamber, a vast, elaborately decorated room that felt more like a prison than a sanctuary. The bed was adorned with white silk sheets, and the room was filled with the overpowering scent of jasmine. A lone candle flickered on the bedside table, its light barely penetrating the overwhelming darkness. Zara stood frozen at the doorway, her heart pounding against her ribs as Rahim stepped closer. "You belong to me now." His voice was deep, laced with something sinister. A shiver ran down Zara's spine. She clenched her fists, summoning the courage to look him in the eye. But before she could speak, a sudden gust of wind extinguished the candle, plunging the room into darkness. Then, the whispers began. Low, eerie murmurs echoed through the chamber, coming from nowhere and everywhere at once. Zara's breath hitched as she felt a cold presence surround her, unseen fingers grazing her skin. She turned sharply, her eyes searching the darkness, but there was nothing there. Just the suffocating blackness pressing in on her. Rahim, too, had stiffened, his confident posture faltering. "Who's there?" he barked, his voice sharp, but there was no answer, only the whispers growing louder, more urgent, more sinister. Zara backed away until she felt the wall behind her, her heart hammering in terror. Then, the candle flickered back to life on its own, revealing a sight that sent ice coursing through her veins. A shadow stood at the foot of the bed, a towering, shifting figure with hollow, empty eyes. Its presence was suffocating, the air around it thick with an unnatural chill. Rahim stumbled back, his face drained of color. "This house does not belong to you," the shadow whispered, its voice layered with echoes of the past. Zara could barely breathe. The truth settled over her like a heavy fog. This mansion, this marriage, this night, none of it was what it seemed. Something far darker lurked within these walls, something waiting, watching. And it had just awakened.